Showing live.
Okay, I'm ready. Are y'all ready? I'm here. Is anybody here? I won't know till I get Doug's phone, but if you're here, welcome. And if you haven't arrived, we're waiting on you. I'm just playing, everybody. I'm excited about what we're going to do tonight. Let me lay this. All right, you ready? Good. Hey, friends. Hey, Mindy. Hey, Mindy, I still haven't opened that Minky, but I don't think it's big enough for anything but baby quilts. You know what I'm talking about? Like little ones. So it's not big. It's not big pieces. You know, it's like small charity kids quilt sizes. I see that this quilt behind me is playing havoc with the camera. Do y'all see this lines behind me moving around? So when you join, be sure and say hey so I'll know you're here. I see that Mindy is here. I see Tawny's here. Hey, I'm so glad you got the cards today. So we're no longer meeting in that location, but everything else is still the same. So use those. Feel free. All the time.
Pat.
Much as you want. Pat's here. Hey, Pat. Okay, I can't. There's a clock. Okay. So thank you all for joining me. More were coming. When you get here, say hey so I'll be able to do a shout out to you. We are going to talk about, I'm going to teach you, I'm going to do a tutorial tonight on how to make this quilt behind me. So, that's what we're doing tonight. And, I will get started on that here in just a few minutes. But first I want to say, as always, I hope you've had a marvelous, marvelous Monday. I hope that you are, hope you had a good weekend too. And I want you to know that I did pray over you. I prayed over you today, this afternoon. Everybody that comes, I prayed for your well-being, for your health, for your peace, for your prosperity. And I pray for your safety. There's just something going on in the world today. And I don't know what it is, but it's like antsy. Something's going on in the world, and I don't know what it is, but it's an odd feeling. I've had that all day, so I hope that y'all are not feeling that, and I hope I'm the only one. But nonetheless, I prayed for you. Hey, Pam. Hey, Nita. How are you today? Good. So I'm so glad y'all are here. I'm going to teach y'all, I'm going to do a tutorial on how to make this quilt. I call this quilt, I've called it a lot of things, but what I'm calling it now, I'm in the process of writing a pattern for it. I'm calling it Contemporary Rings because of the pattern that it makes, right? It is ring after ring. So I'll move so you can see it. It's interlocking rings all the way around. And you're going to be amazed at how easy it is. I promise it's so easy. So I'm going to do a whole tutorial. Hey, Catherine. So glad you're here. Okay, so the way we're going to do this is the way to make this is using my new tool, and it is the Orange Peel Picture Window Reverse Applique tool. Because it is orange peel, you'll see the orange stripe at the bottom. But it has instructions. When you get the tool, it has instructions on the back on how to make the block. And I'm going to do a demo tonight. Here's the big piece. Here's the inner window. Am I holding it good?
Tilt everything just a little bit forward.
Here's the inner window. And then there's one more piece that goes right here. And it's probably laying right over there. But I don't need it. I don't need it tonight. We're going to use these two. So the way you make this quilt, let me dissect it for you, because one of the things that quilters do automatically is dissect what we're looking at. It happens. It is so much fun to watch people's behavior, because they'll look at it and they'll study it and like, how did you do that? Well, I'm going to show you. So if you break it down into easy chunks, it's so much easier. Once you see it broken down, you can't unsee it, right? You don't get lost. Okay, so hey Linda, so happy you're here. Okay, this is a block. See it? All I've done is made this block 36 times, 6 across and 6 rows. So 6 blocks and 6 rows. And I turn them back and forth. That is all there is to it. So if you can make one block 36 times. Hey, Susan. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. So you're going to get to see, Susan, a demo of how to make this quilt. So this is the one block. Everybody, I'm just going to reiterate because I don't want you to get lost in the overall picture. This is the block. It is so easy to do. So let me show you how I do it. First thing I do is I take it, my tool is 10 inches by 10 inches. So how do you get 10 inches? Well, there's multiple ways. One is to do a layer cake. Well, layer cakes would be wonderful. Most layer cakes are would make this be very scrappy, that would be a fabulous look. In fact, my brain goes crazy with what would be like if you had a whole scrappy quilt of 10-inch layer cake squares, and you got the one dominant bright or darker color or something, and did this, that would look amazing. So now you've got my brain going. But anyway, what I tend to do when it's all the same background fabric is I do with the fabric. So I in the pattern writing, I figured out that for this size quilt, for the background squares, you need 2.5 yards. You can cut 10-inch. You can get 4 blocks out of every 10-inch with the fabric cut, and you're going to need 36. So that's what the computer said, or my program said, 2.5. I'd have to think through it to see if that was exactly right. So you'd need 40 inches. Yeah, you'd need 2.5 yards. That ain't right. I'm sorry, I can't do it in my head. That's just, forget it. I figured it out on the computer. It said 2.5 yards. Okay, the next thing you have to do, once you cut your square, here's your square. I'm using this little, I used this fabric on purpose because I'm going to erase my, y'all know I use friction pens, and I'm going to erase it. Okay, I use this fabric on purpose because I want to teach you another thing about stripes and directional fabrics. This fabric is navy with a white stripe that goes this way. This one, when I turn the block, are y'all moving? I'm just wondering if I need to move.
Yeah.
Am I in the right place? Okay, so when I turned this, the stripes go different directions. That gives it movement. So I used this to show you that same concept. What I did, I used this, it's not really a stripe, but it's kind of a stripe. So what you do is you take the tool and you lay it on your 10-inch square. And you pull your friction pen or your, whatever pen you've got. I use friction a lot. Y'all know I do. And you can use chalk, you can use whatever you want. I'm going to be writing on the top side of my fabric. Okay, so I simply draw that shape. See that big football shape? And I'll hold it up so you can see it. Okay, now when I laid that down, I had my stripes going up and down, and I had my corners of my football in the top left and the bottom right. So on every single block, I want it to go exactly like that. If you want your square, if you want your background fabric to do this, that gives it movement, right? Gives it more texture. If all your stripes are going in all the same direction, it would mellow everything out, which is good. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I wanted mine to be to show the difference. So I'm showing you how I did that. My stripes are here. Okay. The next thing I have to do is I have to put bias tape on here. Now, everybody gets kind of freaked out about bias tape, but it is the easiest thing in the world. So I'm going to teach you about bias tape. First of all, on Amazon or somewhere like that, I bought something like this, the Tape Maker set. It's a bias tape maker, and it is, yes, okay, all right. It comes in 4 different sizes. Now, the one I used for this project is the blue one. You can make them super tiny. Let me see. I mean, like, let me see. That really, really small one, the green one, ends up with an 1/8 inch wide. Well, that isn't going to do us any good. 1/8 of an inch is not nearly wide enough, so that's why I didn't use that. So I used the blue one. It's the 25 millimeter, which means absolutely nothing to me, but I guess that's what 25 millimeters looks like. Okay. So I am going to tell you the name of a free download. This is this little handy sheet, whip stitch cutting guide for continuous bias tape. The website for this wonderful, kind woman is, or the name is Deborah, Deborah, Moebes, I guess. I don't know. It's Moebes. And it is whip stitch. And this was her site. And it's this great little chart. It says over here, I can't read it upside down. Okay, here. If you're going to use the blue one, you're going to end up with 1/2 inch double fold. And you're going to cut it at 1 7/8. But right here, she says, cut it at 2. You can expand that to 2 inches. So we are going to make bias tape that ends up being this wide. And I'm going to show you how right now. So I'm going to put all my blocks away. Put all these little tools away. Here's how I do it. Now, I figured out for this quilt that you would need 1.5 yards of whatever your bias tape fabric is. But I don't have 1.5 yards because I'm doing a demo here. But what I'm going to show you is how to do it using a fat quarter. Now, I chose this because of the color. There's some of this teal in it. And I wanted the bright so you could see it on camera. So this is just a fat quarter that I've cut, right? Just something I have. So what I do when you do a bias strip, that means that you're going to be cutting it on the angle. So if I were to cut it up and down or left and right, that's going to be with the grain. But I want it cut across like that. So I'm using a fat quarter. If this was 1/2 yard, I could do it, bulk that way. Okay. Do y'all see on my mat, this line right here? That's a 45-degree angle, as is this, and as is this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lay this, do you see it? On that angle. But I need to go this direction because I'm right-handed. So I'm going to do it this way. Okay. You see I've got that fold right there. And I take my really long ruler. So many of you know me well enough to know I have this ruler, this 24-inch ruler. But y'all know that this little handle to hold it down and have stability so it won't slide is one of those bathroom grips that that you put in the bathtub for stability. And you can get them at your local Home Depot, Walmart, Target, whatever. Okay, because this is on a fold, my first cut is going to be 1 inch, right? That's going to give me 2 inches wide total. There's a 2-inch strip. There's one 2-inch strip. Well, each one of these with overhang and all takes about 14 inches. So you need a bunch of these. Now I'll cut my second one. And what I do on my second one is, I don't have to move anything, but I'm putting it at 2 inches and cutting. So I have all these strips. Okay, y'all get the idea, right? You're cutting across the angle. You cut all this up and you just keep cutting until you have all you need. Now the very next step is after you have your bias tape cut, and it takes 1.5 yards cut at bias, on the bias to have enough bias tape. The next thing you're going to do is just like binding. See, I don't do bias binding very often, so, and I do 2.5 inch. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show y'all, because some of y'all are new enough to quilting that you really don't understand binding, at least the way I'm talking about it. So I'm not going to worry about the ends at all. But I have to attach all of these together in one long continuous stream. So what I do is I go to my machine and I lay this one just like this across my sewing machine at my sewing machine across and face up. I bring my second one and I lay it down on top of it at the end. Okay? This is face down, and all I do is just make sure that it's covered. Okay? Now, you know how when you read a book, you start in the top or a page, you start here and then you read down to here? You're going to stitch from the top left corner to the bottom right corner. Do you see that? So here's my needle. So I'm going to turn this. So here's my needle. And I'm going to stitch it. I'm going to move the fabric and it's going to go along there. And when that opens, it's going to be a perfect. Now I'm going to trim these ends. So I have some that are already stitched. Let me show you. All right, these are, okay, here we go. So that's exactly what I did. You see? I don't even know if y'all can see that thread. You can?
Oh, the thread? No.
Okay. I will mark where I stitched. I probably should have used a black. I apologize for that. I wasn't thinking. Okay, I stitched between those two lines. You see that? Now, I just trim that off. And watch what happens. It's like magic every time. So I always, in this process, you're going to do a lot of bias tape you're going to iron. So I fold that over. But I have done all of these. See how I've done all these? Just one after another, after another, after another, after another, all the way down Inches and inches and inches. Okay. Now for the fun part. Everybody kind of gets scared about cut. There's something about bias strips that people, I think we just don't do them often enough that we forget how. It's real easy. Okay. Oh, you're welcome, Pam. I know. Once I teach people, the bottom layer goes left and right, and then top, what you're sewing to it, goes up and down, and then start on the top left and go that. I have messed up so many quilts. I'll tell you the other thing. When I'm adding binding, at the two ends where I'm putting the binding together, I put the whole quilt in my lap, and I put the top of the quilt up here, because the same exact thing applies. But if I have that, trust me, I've done this. This is how I know. If I have it in some other orientation, I can't make it work. It's just, it's me, and this is why I don't do garment clothes, stuff at all. Because it's just, spatially, I can't figure it out. Okay, y'all, this is where the fun happens, in my opinion. So let me arrange this. I need to put all of this like so. All right, now Doug's going to have to rearrange his camera just a tad so he can see what I'm doing. What we're going to do is we are going to feed this through the big end. And once I see a little tip, do you see that little tip coming out? I grab it. Right? Okay. So now I probably have yards of this over here. And what I'm wanting, I have to kind of maybe play with it a little bit when I first get started to get it laying right, just to get it started. My iron is always dry. I have ruined so many irons by leaving water in them and steaming them, and I use them every day, all day long. And eventually they rust, and then I get frustrated because I have an iron that's rusted, and I get, so I don't put water in my irons anymore, just because I've ruined so many. So I have a choice. I can either spray with what I call Annie's Secret Sauce. This is a starch substitute. You'll know how I make it, right? It's 2/3 water, 1/3 cheap vodka. I've told you this. Cheap. The cheapest vodka you can buy. Vodka is a starch. It's made from potatoes. And so when you spray it and then hit it with an iron, the alcohol dissipates. I put a few drops of essential oils in it because I don't want to smell the alcohol. But and sometimes, I think the last one I did was cinnamon. Oh man, it smelled so good. So you can use this, although this relaxes wrinkles. And sometimes when I'm doing this, I prefer something a little bit like stiffer. And I have some starch. Don't use it very often, but boy, when I want it, it's wonderful. So to get this started, I just spray the end. And then so what's happening is I'm just normally, I see what's happening. There's a seam. See that seam right there? It got real thick and I didn't trim that well enough. That was my bad. I should have trimmed that better before I put it through. So hint, word to the wise, trim at least, no longer than 1/4 inch and slightly shorter. Now watch, I can go back. I can reload this. It's so much fun. All right. Once I get that loaded and I hold it down. Now this is good to do. I'm sorry, the camera's right in the iron's way. I'm sure they can't see this. I feel sure.
Up till just then, it was fine.
And I knew it was my fault. I could feel it. I'm sorry. Okay. So you see how smooth that comes out, and it comes out perfectly folded. And I don't have to spray all of it. I just have to spray enough to hold it in place. But now look, I have this perfectly folded 1-inch bias tape. Got it? I do that to all the bias tape. I just keep going. This is at night when we're watching, at the end of the day when I sit in my chair and do my projects or whatever I'm working on, bias tape is a good thing for me to sit there and do. I don't know if y'all know this or not, but Doug made me, I have a chair, and Doug got me a piece of wood that fits on both arms, so I have this little table kind of thing. And here's another seam, and I just pulled past it and press it down. See how easy that is? So now you have bias tape. Do that all the way through your yardage. Okay, now, once that's done, oh gosh, this cord is caught in my shoe. Once that is done, we are ready to go back to our block. Okay, let's say this is how long I have it. And here's what we're going to do. So I'm going to trim that off just so it won't be confusing to you. See this line that I drew? I'm going to place this bias tape off the edge. I'll trim that later. And I'm going to lay the outside of this bias tape along that line that we drew earlier. Got it? I'm going to go to my sewing machine and I'm going to top stitch right along that edge. And I am laying this right here and stitching right along here. See that? And it lays so easily and quickly because it's bias and it'll bend. The next step, look, I've even got one to show you. So I started stitching right here. See, I started stitching. Can y'all see that stitch? In the blue, there it is. Just that close, just that close. And I go all the way around, all the way down, all the way, and I go off. Here's a seam. I ignore it. I go off, I stitch all the way off. I go back to the top and I lay it down just smooth where the iron is. And same thing. I stitch right along there. 1, 2, okay. So I would stitch all the way along there. Once that one is in place, I always start at the top. This is all stitched down now. I go over here, off the edge, and I lay this edge along that mark that I've made. And stitch it on the, first I do the outside, and then I do the inside. Let me show you what that looks like. This. See, and this one I haven't even finished. But look, you can tell. I did this one. I started here. I went outside, inside. Flipped it over. Did outside. And now I'm finishing up the inside. See that? And I just lay it. And it'll lay so easily down there. So once I get that stitched down, I have a pin here I need. I'm going to pretend like I've got that all stitched down, okay? The next thing I do is these aren't really dog ears, but we're going to call them dog ears. That's a term that, for new quilters, that's the little points that you have when you, on some blocks. Okay. So there. Pretend like that's all nice and snug and there's a loose thread. A thread. I'll get it. Okay. See that? Now the next thing I do is I go back to my tool. And this tool will fit right there. You see that? Because that's where we drew. Fit right there. So on the wall, what I've done is the background and this part. Now this opening is smaller than the one I'm doing now, and let me explain why. When I'm manufacturing the tools, I have to try different dimensions to see the most, what area I can cover, and it's all that like geometry stuff. And so when I did this one, it was before I had gotten my prototype. And when I got this one done, I decided that I wanted the inner window to be a bit bigger. So you can tell it's not quite as big, but it's still, it's the same concept. So here we are. We lay this here. We draw that line. So this goes back to the reverse applique. So now we're doing reverse applique. I am cutting always close to the center. I cut inside. Here's the line. See the line that I drew? And I cut 1/4 of an inch, at least 1/4 of an inch to the inside. And normally I don't use such big scissors, but I can use any size I need. And these happen to be handy. Now, just like in garment sewing, anytime you put a sleeve in or anything that's rounded, you have to snip to the edges, right? So that's what I'm doing here. I'm snipping to the edges. Now, I'm going to protect my mat by putting a piece of paper down. I'm going to use my handy dandy glue, whatever glue you want. If you want to use, let's see if I had a different one. This is all gummy. So there's, it's purple disappearing. Hey, y'all, just so y'all know, Elmer's glue, if your glue, it should be dark purple. If it turns light purple, you're just not going to even believe this, but I wrote Elmer's glue this last week, or a couple weeks ago, and said, my glue has changed colors, it has changed consistency, and I'm wondering why. And they said, we will replace it if you will send your receipt. Oh, good grief. No, I'm not going to. No, it's not where I'm not. That's not even what I wanted to know. I think it has to do with age. I think after about 2 or 3 years, it just kind of gets, changes color. Could be heat. I don't really know. I've never tested it. So do y'all see what I'm doing? I put glue along here. Where I snipped, I'm rolling it back. And in the points, I'm rolling it back very, just as far as, just laying it back. That's all I'm doing. Okay? And I'm finger pressing. You see that? I'm going to hit this with the iron. Y'all have heard me say this 100 times, I'm sure. But glue, when it melts, it dissipates. It distributes, and it takes the gumminess out. So when you go to your sewing machine and you start using your needle, Connie says she thinks it's drying with age. It could be, Connie. I don't know. I guess it could be. So, sorry. Anyway, I got distracted. Once you hit it with, whether it's new glue or dark purple or not, if you hit it with an iron, it takes the gumminess out of the scenario, and your sewing machine won't gum up. Okay, now we have a hole. See, we have a hole in it. So far we have this. See that? Okay, now we have to fill the window. Well, here's a strip of that fabric. And what I like to do, because I've done this so often, is I like to fussy cut what I want in the window. So, for example, if that's what I want in the window, let me get my, here it is. I can use my tool. That's what I should be using, is my tool. Okay, if this is what I want in my window, then I cut outside of that because it's going to go on the back. And I I need the extra fabric. All right. There we go. Okay. So I flip this over. I hit this with another little bit of glue. The way I like to do it is I like to position the top like so. And the way I get rid of the friction pin and hold this together so I can get it to the sewing machine, because I have to top stitch this down. And I want to melt the glue. And I probably wouldn't do a whole quilt like this but I'm using, but look, there's my block. The next thing I have to do is I have to top stitch. And I'm going to use this one. Can you see that top stitch? All the way around this little window. I just top stitched along the edge. Okay, so now I have this block. And I haven't top stitched this, but you can get the idea. Something's wrong. Oh, y'all know what I did? Do you see what I did? On this one, look how my stripes are going. They're the same. So I turned one of them the wrong way when I drew it. Rats. That's why I put extra blocks on the back of the stinking quilt, because I mess up. Right? So I wanted it. Do you see how I wanted it to go this way? I've never done a quilt that it was all done right. Y'all know that, right? I mean, it's just part of what you do. Okay, this one, let's see if I did it right. Now, doesn't that look strange where this one is going this way and all of these are going the same direction? So that's why with directional, you have to be very, very careful. So next time I'll be more careful. I just was, I guess, hurrying a little too much. So anyway, that's the way you make the block. So what I think I'm going to do on this one is probably going to be, I'll finish a few blocks and do it for like a charity quilt. And what I'm thinking is do maybe 9 of these, like this side, like this 3, and then put a big border around it and just have 3 in there. I don't know what I'll do. I'll do something. Anyway, questions. Hey everybody, Jerry Massey is here, and that is my dad. Hey, Dad. And he is, I wonder if, Dad, are you wanting to learn to quilt? That would be awesome. I will teach you. Okay, so questions about that? If anybody needs one of my orange peel picture window reverse applique tools, you can go to adie.mchugs.com, or you can put a note in the message. You can send me a text or something like that, and we'll get you one. It comes with the 10-inch square and then the inner windows too, and instructions. Okay, is there anything else? Let me look real quick. Is there anything else that I was supposed to show you or do for you? Okay, I guess that's all. All right, friends, then what I will do is, at this point, every time I have started doing a little thing that I've written recently, a daily devotional, and so today I'm going to do one called Show and Tell, and I wrote it in March. So every time I pull a quilt off my quilting machine, I carry it into the living room and I hold it up for Doug to see. He stands and he does the same thing so I can see it fully. I've done this since I began quilting in 2010, and obviously I've done it hundreds and hundreds of times. Yesterday afternoon, after working in the yard most of the day, now this was a couple weeks ago, Doug asked me if I wanted to see what he'd been doing, so I went outside with him. Snow took a real toll on a lot of our plants, and he showed me the newly trimmed hedges around the house. It was a lot of work, hard work. Piles of brush resulted in a bigger and bigger burn pile. He did the exact same thing I do. He wanted me to see his work. I'm realizing it doesn't matter if we are 6 or 66. We want to share our work and our accomplishments and our efforts. Quilters do it all the time. I attend a monthly Quilters Bible study, and we bring handwork and we share our finishes from the previous month. We call it show and tell. Quilt guilds do it all the time, show and tell. And at the end of teaching a beginning quilting class, we do a show and tell. We just all do show and tells. We're reading the Bible all the way through this year in a group on Facebook called We Are Called to Pray. You're welcome to join us, by the way, if you'd like to. And that day that I wrote this, on March 23rd, we had started reading Joshua. And I love Joshua. It's one of my favorite books in the whole Bible. It starts when the Lord spoke to Joshua. I just love that. I love that the Lord will speak to us. And the Lord told Joshua, I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. That's in Joshua 1:3. And that is an awesome promise. So then Joshua sent the 2 spies to check out Jericho. Jericho was 5 miles west of the Jordan River, and Joshua and the Israelites were camped on the eastern edge. The spies made it all the way to Jericho, and while they were in Jericho, Joshua 2:1 says, so they went and entered the house of a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. Well, the king heard about it. So the king of Jericho sent his men to Rahab's house to find the spies. But Rahab deceived the king's men, and she protected Joshua's spies. She did not show, nor did she tell the king's warriors that she had hidden them on her roof under the stalks of flax. But before, and this is scripture, this is Joshua 2:8, starting and following. Before the spies lay down for the night, she went up on the roof and said to them, I know that the Lord has given you this land, and that a great fear of you has fallen on us, so that all who live in this country are melting in fear because of you. We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, whom you completely destroyed. And when we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. Now please swear to me by the Lord that you will show kindness to my family because I have shown kindness to you. Give me a sure sign that you will spare the lives of my father and mother, brother and sisters, and all who belong to them, and that you will save us from death. And the men assured her, our lives for your lives. If you don't tell what we are doing, we will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. So they promised each other. And then in Joshua 2:17, a few verses down, another element was added to their agreement. Now the men said to her, this oath you made us swear will not be binding on us unless when we enter the land you have tied this scarlet cord in the window, through which you let us down, and unless you have brought your father and your mother and your brothers and all the family into your house. If any of them go outside to the street, their blood will be on their own heads. We will not be responsible. For those who are in the house with you, their blood will be on our head, if a hand is laid on them. But if you tell what we are doing, we will be released from the oath. And she says, I agree. Let it be as you say. So it appears to me that this whole story is a show and tell situation. Rahab recognized the Lord as the Lord God Almighty even before the spies arrived. She showed kindness to the men and saved their lives. The spies agreed to show her mercy when Jericho was attacked if that scarlet cord was hanging in the window. She showed kindness and mercy, and so did they. It's a different scenario, but it's still show and tell. They had agreements, and they showed each other kindness and honor. So today, let's see how we can show the love of Christ through our actions, and if we get the chance, let us brag about his goodness. Amen. So thank you all for being here so much. Hey, Betty arrived. Hey, Betty. Thank you for being here. If you didn't get to see the whole thing and you're interested in making this quilt, please watch for a little quick tutorial on how to make the blocks. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have questions, you know you can always reach out to me. Y'all have a fabulous week and a marvelous Monday.